as when Whovian Jones hits 300 subscribers, I'll do a list ranking my own personal top 10 classic Doctor Who stories. Well, I better get started. Thank you so much for subscribing and watching my videos, and today we're going to be going a little bit more down that personal route than we usually do, as I'm going to share with you all my top 10 favourite classic Doctor Who stories. As you've probably guessed by the output of this channel, that whilst I love the new series and New Who, my heart belongs to the classic era of the show and all of its low budget and high concept charm. I've not even really made a formal script for this video, I've just bullet pointed my 10 favourite stories. Believe it or not, the hardest thing was not choosing the stories, but choosing the overall order. But we're going to have a go and I'm going to share them with you all today. My name's Ruby, aka Whovian Jones. That's Petrol the Dalek, and I hope you all enjoy hearing about my 10 favourite classic Doctor Who stories. Starting off with number 10, we have Remembrance of the Daleks. Now, I came to this story fairly late in my life of being a Doctor Who fan. I think I was about 14 years old and I'd never seen a Sylvester McCoy story properly up until that point, and I got off eBay a job lot of McCoy tapes, and the first one I watched was Remembrance of the Daleks. I remember just being blown away by it. I'd grown up in an era where Sylvester McCoy was slagged off and slated on every corner of the internet, and by the people who watched the show that grew up with it in the 70s and 80s. They all say, oh, it was rubbish with the licorice all-sort monster and all that sort of thing. I just absolutely loved it. I loved the Doctor in it, I loved the character of Ace, and I loved how dark and gritty it was. And I was really surprised by how close it was to episodes of New Who. You've got all these little strands in the episode, like Ace's romantic subplot with, is the character called Mike? I can't quite remember. And all those things like that. You've got so many iconic Doctor moments where he gives that speech about having the sugar in his cup of tea and the ripples in time and all that stuff. And I love the thing with the hand of Omega and Ace battering the Dalek with the baseball bat. And of course, the best moment of the entire story and of Sylvester McCoy's entire run, the unlimited rice pudding section of his final battle speech with Davros. It's just a classic, and I really didn't know where to place Remembrance of the Daleks. I think I've put it in 10th spot just because, although I love it and it's a 10 out of 10 story, I don't quite love it or revisit it as much as the stories which have come above it. In 9th place, we have The Demons with John Pertwee's third Doctor. Once again, came to this one very late in my life of Doctor Who. I bought another job lot of tapes, I think when I was about 18 years old, and I was really curious about The Demons. I don't know if any of you guys were old enough to sort of remember, but there used to be a Freeview channel. I think it was called the Horror Channel. It was channel 70 something on the original Freeview boxes. Anyway, whenever we used to go on holiday and we didn't have Sky TV there or anything like that, we'd just sort of be flicking through the channels early in the morning, and the Horror Channel always used to show just one episode of a classic Doctor Who story. I think they must have shown a part a day or something, but we were never around long enough or busy to watch the next one. And I distinctly remember seeing a part of The Demons when I must have been about 10 or 11 years old. I remember seeing the gargoyle. There's supposed to be a stone gargoyle, which is just a man in a suit, and I remember the brig shooting at it and going, just once I'd like to meet a monster or alien that isn't resistant to bullets. And I remember being really sort of curious by it, and it always sort of filed that in the back of my mind. And when I got the tapes, I saw the cover of The Demons, I saw John Pertwee's Doctor, Delgado's Master, and I also saw the little stone gargoyle, and I thought, right, I need to watch this one, I need to put it in. I popped in the tape, I hit play, and I loved what I was seeing. It was perfect for that exact moment in my life, when maybe I thought that some other classic Doctor Who was a bit too kiddish and a bit too childish for me. This was dark, it was gritty, and genuinely really atmospheric and really scary. I think Delgado gives his best performance here as the Master. I love the reveal that he's the priest of Devil's End in those glasses, and he's one of those few people that he just has an evil face, doesn't he? When you just look at him, he just screams evil and oozes evil out of every orifice of his mustache and stuff, and yeah, it's just brilliant. It really justifies being 6 parts long as well. We have so many different components to the story. The energy barrier around Devil's End, which they can't penetrate and they have to break through the whole thing with a Zal. It's just a really well told, really well paced story, and I love the ending where the Master is finally cornered and finally caught after seemingly escaping so quickly and so often throughout the rest of that series. Coming in at number 8, we have The Caves of Androzani. Now, this story has a legendary reputation. Of course, growing up looking at magazines about books about classic Doctor Who, it was always listed as the greatest ever story of all time. And once again, in that same job lot where I got the demons, there was also The Caves of Androzani. And I remember looking at it thinking, okay, this is going to be it. This is going to be the greatest Doctor Who story of all time. I put it in, watched it, didn't like it. Didn't enjoy it at all. Thought it was dull, boring, and it just wasn't for me. And then maybe a couple of years later I thought, I'll give it another go. I was watching a bunch of classic stories with my mum and she'd not seen much of Peter Davison's Doctor, so I thought, oh, if this is the best story, it'll be a good one to show her, etc. Watched it again, didn't like it. And it stayed this way for quite, I think I must have been about 21 at that sort of stage, maybe 2021, it's sort of COVID years. Didn't like it, and I thought, wow, I must be a really bad Doctor Who fan, I must be missing part of my brain or something like that, but I just didn't enjoy the story. Now, in this time, I started making videos myself properly, started doing YouTube, short films, music videos and all that stuff. I started learning about the art of video production and directing, and became really interested in film and composition and how all that stuff was put together. Anyway, earlier this year, about 6 months ago, I went back and I watched The Caves of Androzani again. And it was like seeing it for the first ever time. I'd forgotten all the details of the plot somehow. I must have just erased it because I didn't enjoy it. And I could not believe what I was seeing. I could not believe the epic storytelling, the epic camera shots, like in all the other sort of classic Doctor Who's from that era. Like when you even compare it with the story directly after The Twin Dilemma, the handheld camera shots of that little monster thing in the cave look so good and so much more atmospheric than the usual static camera on a tripod, which is just the sort of boring visual norm for most of the classic series of Doctor Who. Aside from this, I really understood the plot this time. I don't know why I didn't the previous times, but I really got what was going on. I understood the need for Spectrox. I understood the tragedy of the sort of Phantom of the Opera character that was Sharaz Jek. After I watched it this time, I was so blown away by it that I checked on Reddit to see what people were saying about the episode, and I can't remember who it was, but someone posted a great thread, and it was what makes The Caves of Androzani so great, and someone commented underneath, I can't remember the username or anything like that, and apologies if I'm sort of plagiarising or butchering what you said a little bit here, but they sort of said that the reason it's so great is because there is no good character in this story. In every other story, there is someone who allies themselves to the Doctor. The Doctor's fighting the good fight. He's on the good side of what's going on. You know, he has allies. Even if it's other rebels that are lawbreakers, he has allies that are helping the story along, but there is no good character in this story. Every single person is in the wrong. Every single person is evil. And that's what makes it so unique and so wonderful. And frankly, the fact that the Twin Dilemma comes after it makes it even better, but there we go, by the by. As there's a really funny thing where Peter Davison says that he really loves it and it's his favourite Doctor Who story, apart from when he turns into Colin Baker at the end. And he loves Colin, he loves all the other Doctors, but there's something about his dry humour there that I really appreciate and really enjoy. Coming in at number 7, we have The Seeds of Doom. Now, I think this is one of those stories that I watched when I was really young, so part of the reason it's in the top 10 is pure nostalgic attachment, and I've got no shame in saying that. Although I watched it recently for my top 3 4th Doctor Stories video, one of the really early ones on the channel, I still loved it just as much, still thought it was absolutely brilliant, hence why it's here on the list. Got it from a boot sale when I was about 7 or 8 years old, around that sort of prime age for classic Doctor Who, and I love it to bits. I just can't get enough of it. I think it's a really unique story. The fact that it's spread across sort of 2 locations really lets it breathe in a way that other stories don't. The fact that we've got the Arctic base with these 2 ancient seed pods at the start of the adventure, then the rest of the thing sort of takes place in Harrison Chase's mansion, sort of really nicely separates the plot. And I love that the Doctor's aware of the alien this time and he sort of knows who they are and what they're doing, because you kind of get the impression after a while that with all these creatures he encounters, you think maybe he should know more of them if he really is as old as he says he is, blah 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 blah. But anyway, The Seeds of Doom is just an absolute classic. Love the cliffhangers in this one. Love the body horror of when the people get turned into the sort of plant thing, and when it takes its final form at the end as this sort of house-like thing and sort of starts speaking. I just think it's absolutely great. Love how the only way to get rid of it is finally for the use of force, for it to be absolutely blown to bits at the end. In 6th place, we have The Enemy of the World with Patrick Troughton's second Doctor. Now, I've waxed lyrical about this in my early video about Patrick Troughton's second Doctor, but this was one of those stories that I had the Lost in Time set on DVD when I was a kid. I watched Enemy of the World episode 3 along with Web of Fear episode 1, and to be honest, I didn't really think much of episode 3, and when that and the Web of Fear were discovered, the Web of Fear had big silly monsters in it. You know, I was like a 12-year-old kid. I wanted to see the Yeti roaming around the London Underground. I did not want to see Patrick Troughton playing dual roles in this dark political story. I rented The Enemy of the World off Love Film and I got bored after episode 1 when I was 12, and I just thought, it's good that it's been recovered and all that stuff, but maybe it's not for me. So years and years and years and years went by until we're once again in the COVID years. I'm watching a bunch of classic Doctor Who serials with my mum on BritBox, and we decide to watch The Enemy of the World. And both of us could not believe the quality of the story and the adventure we were watching. For those who don't know, I mean, I presume you do know if you're watching this video, Patrick Troughton plays the Doctor and he also plays the evil salamander. And you would think, with them being the same character, that you kind of see through the illusion and see through the magic a little bit, but Troughton is so skillful in this role that you really do buy that he is the Doctor and he is this other person of Salamander. And it gets even more complex when the Doctor has to pretend to be Salamander, so it's Patrick Troughton pretending to be Patrick Troughton, but it somehow works and flows really well. That whole plot where there's a reveal that Salamander's got a whole underground city of people that he's keeping alive, and he tells them that there's a nuclear war on the surface and they can never leave. It's just so dark and so chilling. There's a final plot twist at the end which I really love, but once again I won't give it away here just in case you've not seen The Enemy of the World. It's a quintessential slice of 60s Doctor Who, and we as fans are so lucky to have it back in the archives. I don't think anyone understood how good it really was until we got to see it again, because once again on audio and even with the telesnaps it just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't be the same. In 5th place, we have another childhood story in The Deadly Assassin. Now, for those of you who've seen my I Collected Every Doctor Who VHS video, if you haven't, watch it right away now. There will be a link somewhere in this video to it, but if you have, then you'll be familiar with me saying that my brother had Earthshock and The Deadly Assassin on VHS. He never watched them, I don't even know why we had them, gifted them to me, and I didn't watch The Deadly Assassin for quite a few years because frankly, Peter Pratt's master, is it Peter Pratt? I think it's Peter. I hope it's Peter Pratt. Peter Pratt's master was just so scary on that back cover and still is quite horrific to this very day. But when I finally did sit down and watch it once again, yeah, this is just it. This is just it. I think I must have been that same golden age, 7, 8 and 9. All those ages sort of blur into one when you really think about it. But I was at that perfect childhood age and it was just so amazing. You know, growing up with New Who, like growing up with Rose Tyler and Martha, there was no Gallifrey. At this point, that finale where Russell brought Gallifrey and the Time Lords back, that hadn't happened yet. That didn't exist. There was no Gallifrey in my eyes. And to be able to go back and see what Gallifrey was like, oh my god, you know, it was just unbelievable. This is the Doctor's home, this is Time Lord Society, and he's a criminal there and he's an outlaw and he maybe murdered the Lord President. I can't believe what I'm seeing. This is so over the top, isn't it? But this is genuinely how I feel about these stories. This is genuinely how passionate I am about these pieces of media. The Deadly Assassin is a story I will watch every couple of years, and it does get criticised now for being a little bit slow because the Doctor doesn't have a companion, so there's not that natural person that he can bounce dialogue off very easily, but I just think it's perfect in every single way. Like, it must have been one of the first sort of horror things I ever saw, like when he's in the Matrix and the cliff has the eyes on it. That's really scary. And also because I was a New Who kid, there's a point where his foot gets trapped in the train tracks. Cliffhanger to... Is it the cliffhanger to episode 2, I believe? He gets his foot caught in the train tracks and it gets sort of clamped down, and a man in a gas mask driving a train is about to run it over. And me, the kid brain, not knowing anything about Doctor Who and continuity, thought this was somehow connected with The Empty Child and that somehow the villain from The Empty Child was part of the classic series. But anyway, that's just ridiculous. But anyway, The Deadly Assassin, I love when the Doctor's been drowned at the end of part 3. I know it got a lot of flack, that scene, but it really does hammer hammer home the dangerous situation he's in. And I love Peter Pratt's master, the fact that he sort of kills himself with that drug and it turns out he's alive. And recently watching it, the whole political subtext is just wonderful. The whole thing, is it Chancellor Goth? When they're trying to protect Chancellor Goth and saying that Goth died a hero and he shouldn't be tampered with, and sort of rewriting history and all that. I think it's great that the writers showed that even on the Doctor's homeworld this same political corruption exists, and it's a great mirror for our universe. In fourth place we have the Daleks, the OG Dalek serial with the one and only William Hartnell. Now I recently did a video about this where I said that the reason it was so great is because underneath the Daleks being instantly iconic with that great design in it, there's such a good human drama throughout the whole piece. The whole thing with Ian and Barbara being held hostage essentially by the Doctor and them having to come together. Heck, the Doctor is the villain in that story. He makes them explore the city. He puts their lives at risk. They nearly die because of how selfish the Doctor is, and it's just wonderful. I got this tape off eBay when I was 12 years old, the Daleks remastered one, and again I was at the perfect age to see it where I could appreciate what I was watching and yet still get drawn into the storytelling of it. I could appreciate, so this was 50th anniversary year of Doctor Who, this was why I watched it. I could appreciate how important it was, how great it was, but I could also still enter that sort of fantasy kid world with it, if that makes sense, and I could talk all day about the Daleks and how good it is. Once again, it's criticised now for its heavy amounts of padding, and maybe we've had better stories with the Daleks, but for me, that sort of haunting atmosphere, it really does feel claustrophobic, because it really was. You know, there's only one corridor in the shot, and when Barbara's getting lost in the Dalek city before the first Dalek finds her, she walks down the same corridor like 5 times, and the camera's put in a slightly different place, which I find quite amusing and quite funny, but it adds to the charm. I'm not one of those people that's critical and say, oh, it's rubbish because it's low budget. It's not. It's just charming. It's charmingly witty and charmingly fun and charmingly invented how they got themselves out of these scenarios. Like, we've only got the budget for one corridor. Well, let's just shoot it from a really low angle, then shoot it from a high angle, and it will look like it's exactly the same. In third place, we have Earthshock. Once again, it's a childhood story. It was the first of 2 classic Doctor Who tapes I got, like with the Deadly Assassin, and yeah, I just loved it straight away. Again, grew up in an era where Peter Davison was very heavily slagged off at the time for a lot of different reasons. I think a lot of people, like my own parents, they saw Tom Baker and John Pertwee were both the Doctor for such a long time that they couldn't imagine anyone else in the role. And of course, they'd gotten older as well, like a lot of people, and they realised the show just wasn't for them anymore. And that's totally fine. It didn't really have anything to do with Peter Davison, but of course, as Doctor Who fans, this is the way that we go. We blame the Doctor for anything like that. It's the reason this Doctor's rubbish. That's when the show went rubbish. It's still going on to this very day, I'm sure you're aware. But anyway, Earthshock is just a perfect story. I think you don't even really need to get any other stories to understand the relationship between the Doctor and Adric, as you can just get dropped into Earthshock and you can get everything you need. Adric is not happy. He wants to return home to this place called E-Space. The Doctor can't or won't or finds it hard to take him back to E-Space. They have a massive row. Then by the end, Adric decides that he wants to stay with the Doctor. All the while, they have a great adventure with a redesign of the Cybermen. The Cybermen are really great in this. I think it maybe is their last great outing in the classic series where what they're doing actually makes sense and it's actually very interesting. The whole reveal that actually every silo on the ship is full of hundreds and hundreds of Cybermen is just absolutely wonderful, and I just can't get over how awesome Earthshock is. That whole thing where the Doctor's having an argument with the cyber controller about smelling a flower and eating a well-prepared meal and how amazing that is, and then him saying, these emotions are irrelevant, Doctor. It's just awesome. I may have to watch Earthshock tonight. I watched it only a few months ago, but I am addicted to this story. Once again, it being set on Earth for the first 2 episodes, and then the space freighter really makes it nice and breezy. 4 parts long, perfect length, absolutely perfect. There's enough characters to keep it interesting, and of course, spoiler alert, Adric's death at the end is so tragic, and that silent credits, when the silent credits roll with a picture of Adric's badge, it is so unbelievably sad. In second place, we have Doctor Who and the Silurians. Now at this point you may be guessing that this was a childhood story, and yes, you are correct, but even now I think it really holds up. It's just so unique and so interesting. At this point, Doctor Who was heavily influenced by Quatermass, and I've watched a lot of Quatermass and know a lot about that since, and yeah, I can sort of totally see where they were coming coming from and the idea they were going from, something like Quatermass and the Pit, very reminiscent of the Jon Pertwee era. Anyway, Doctor Who and the Silurians. I love the conflict in this between the Doctor and the Brigadier, that the Doctor wants to reason with the Silurians down below. Nobody else does, they just want to blow them up and everything like that, as is the way in many Jon Pertwee stories. The Doctor is this ambassador for the aliens and everyone else is like, nah. I love the fact that there's a bit of double crossing going on, that someone's working with the Silurians to get secrets. I think it's one of the few stories of this era that really does look perfect, and it's one of those stories where they first fully realise the potential of it being made and shot in colour. The Silurians' base is this off trickling green colour with all this slime coming off it, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. Yes, we are exiled to Earth, but we can still tell a brilliant story with some excellent monsters throughout. The pandemic element of it is also quite fun and quite interesting, considering what we've lived through in the past decade. I don't really want to say much more than that, but it's a story that for me never gets old, justifies its 7 parts in length, and I just feel this infinite nostalgia for such a clever story. Once again, the human race is brought down by endless greed and capitalism, and I am all down for stories that tell this narrative. In first place, we have The Tomb of the Cybermen. Now for me, Doctor Who, classic or modern, doesn't get any better than Tomb of the Cybermen. If I was to do an amalgamated list of all the classic stories and all the new Who stories, I would still put Tomb of the Cybermen at the top. It's just classic. I don't really know what to say about it apart from that. Again, waxed lyrical about it in my video about Patrick Troughton's Second Doctor, that really early one that I made, but it's just so awesome. It could work as a 90-minute horror film with the Doctor just sort of showing up as an explorer with his companions. You don't really need to know anything about him being a Time Lord or Gallifrey or where he's come from or the TARDIS, as the TARDIS isn't in this story apart from a tiny bit at the beginning, but it just works. It just works. I can't imagine living in a world where Tomb of the Cybermen isn't readily available to watch. The fact that it was missing until the early 1990s, then it got returned, released on video, and we finally got to see it in all its glory. It's just a legendary story. Just as Doctor Who and the Silurians is a perfect representation of what they could do with the show being in colour, Tomb of the Cybermen represents what was so good about the claustrophobic black and white era. I think Doctor Who did lose something of its spooky mystique going into colour, because I can imagine the sets, you know, where the Cybermen come out of the tomb and the sort of control room upstairs with all the knobs and levers, maybe would look a bit hokey if it was in colour. Maybe it'd just look a bit cheap or something like that. And I just love the sort of black and white, sort of dark tinge to the whole story. It's also really adult, really graphic, and really violent. Once again, there's a member of the human race out for their own good that wants to bargain with the Cybermen and wants to become great, and it's great watching Eric Cleek get his comeuppance in the end. There has been a slight bit of controversy with this story regarding the characterisation of the character Toberman, and I completely understand that. This is a very difficult and a very sensitive issue, and I can completely understand why in some people's eyes it's not aged very well. And hand on heart, when you do start to think about it, that element of the story now is really off and really weird and sort of a bit wrong. I honestly don't know what we should do about that as fans, but that's a whole subject for a whole other video. But yeah, The Tomb of the Cybermen for me has Patrick Troughton at his whimsical best. It has Jamie McCrimmon and Victoria Waterfield making the ultimate trio of Doctor Who Season 5 a reality. And that's it. That was my 10 personal favourite classic Doctor Who stories. What's your top 10 favourite classic Doctor Who stories? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really be interested in reading some other people's opinions. If you enjoyed this video, the channel also has a Patreon. A link to that can be found in the description. Basically, if you join, you get behind the scenes stuff and you get your name in the comments of every single future Whoby Jones video. Thank you for 300 subscribers. What should we do for the next milestone? When this channel gets to 500 subscribers, I will do a video about my top 10 favourite new Who Doctor Who stories. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Whoby Jones YouTube channel.